going on YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's Kevin Forte, and today we are going to be taking a look at the Boston Bruins, and yeah, you guys see the title, shipping a bunch of W's up to Boston so far this year. They haven't skipped a beat, despite losing some key veterans to this roster. The Boston Bruins beat moves forward. Brad Marchand named the captain of this team during the summertime, and it seems like the Bruins just seem to transition perfectly, at least so far. Is the Bruins' success so far this season a fluke, or is this going to be a legitimate reason for concern for the other teams in the Atlantic? For the Bruins, not going anywhere. Anybody thinking the Bruins were going to fall off this year, miss the playoffs, it may or may not have been me. Nope. They're proving those people wrong. They're proving those people wrong so far. So let's take a look at what the Bruins have done so far. The Boston Bruins right now, their season has gone off to a great start. 5-0-0, 10 points, first in the Atlantic, only tied with the Red Wings, but they have an overtime loss in there, a regulation loss in there. And what's interesting about the Bruins' success so far is it's coming from a little bit of a different philosophy. Now, they are scoring goals. Don't get that twisted. You look at their goals for, 12th best in the league. Their goals against is the big one. They have the best goals against in the National Hockey League, which is huge. This is exactly what you want to see from the Bruins. Their defense playing well, their goaltending holding up, which is a huge part of the story. And you know, right now, if I'm a Bruins fan, you have to be pretty impressed with what you've seen. Now, there was a lot of criticism, including from me here. I'll admit, I'll take fault here, that maybe the Bruins goaltending, as good as it was last year, to expect it to be where it was last year again this year, and for them to repeat, really was asking for a lot. But so far, again, only 5 games combined between both of them, but Linus Ullmark and Jeremy Swayman, they're putting in the work. They are putting in the work, and they're playing really well right now for the Boston Bruins. So you look at the goalie numbers so far for Linus Ullmark and Jeremy Swayman. Jeremy Swayman has played in a pair of games, of course. All of these have been wins so far. He has a .943 save percentage and 2 goals against. So, again, he's only played in 2 games. So take with that what you will. But still, that's something to mention. Also, Linus Ullmark, 3-0. .962 save percentage, 1 goals against. Again, 3 games played. But it's still worth mentioning because this is a huge part of this Bruins, the fabric of this Bruins team. A huge part of the Bruins' success last year was because of that goalie tandem. Now, another thing, and I mentioned this literally 2 weeks ago when we were talking about if teams make the playoffs, what do they need for success? And I said, if the Bruins make the playoffs, it will be because David Pastrnak leads the team in goals and points. And ladies and gentlemen, what do you see right there? What do you see right there? It's David Pastrnak doing what he needs to do for this team. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I'm so right, because that's an easy take. That's an easy dub to take to the bank. You knew Pastrnak was a good player, but was he going to be able to do it with a different makeup of the team? And he has so far. Now, what's interesting for the Bruins' success so far is, yeah, they're not scoring a ton of goals. It's all about the defensive style, and they remind me a lot of the Islanders and the Dallas Stars here in the mid-2020s. The Bruins are looking like that type of team this year. It's almost like the Bruins know, hey, listen, we know we aren't the Bruins from last year. We don't have Krejci. We don't have Krejci. We don't have Bergeron. We've lost a couple big pieces to this team. Taylor Hall's no longer there. So this team needs to be more structured and more defensively minded. And it seems like so far the Boston Bruins have completely bought into that message by Jim Montgomery. And that's another person that needs to get some credit here, is Jim Montgomery. It wasn't one of those things where it's just like, yeah, he was inherited a really good team. Absolutely. But you still need to work with those players. And sometimes players like the guys on the Bruins with a lot of pride and a lot of experience in the league, sometimes those are the most difficult guys to work with. Think of what Spencer Carberry has to deal with right now in Washington with veterans like Carlson, Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, Backstrom, Wilson, Oshie. It's a difficult job. And maybe those personalities don't mesh as well with the team environment down in Washington, and that's maybe for another video. But you get my point. Jim Montgomery still has to galvanize this team and bring them together, which he has done so far this season. So when I look at the Bruins' success, I think this is sustainable. And I just made a video talking about the Red Wings and their success. And if that's sustainable, I think the Bruins' success is more sustainable than the Red Wings. And the reason I say that is goaltending, because I think I have much more faith in the goalie tandem of Boston than I do in Detroit. And Detroit's goal scoring is going to slow down at some point. Things aren't going to go their way. They're going to get shut out every once in a while. The Bruins is more, they're forcing their will on you. Detroit takes advantage of what comes their way. Boston, I think, is more, listen, their playing style, they're going to force teams to adapt to the way the Bruins play. And I don't know if the Red Wings do that in the same way that the Bruins do. And that's why you look at the numbers so far for this season for some of the younger players in Boston, or even just the new additions. The new guys in either the young ones or the veterans. James Van Riemsdyk, third on the team in points. I'm sure nobody expected that, including me. But he is getting a lot of ice time, and actually he would probably be a pretty good fantasy pickup right now. He has 3 goals in his first 5 games up there. Matt Poitras, we've heard a lot of good things about him. He played well in the preseason. He's playing really well right now. We talked about guys like Trent Frederick and Morgan Geekie needing to step up this season if the Bruins want to succeed. You'd like to see a little bit more production from those two, but again, it's a new role, a new environment for a guy like Geekie. It's going to take a little bit of time to adjust. John Beecher's in this lineup. You want to see a little more from him. But what's kind of disappointing for me is guys like Jake DeBrusk, who has no goals this season. Pavel Zacha, no goals this season. And those are guys that you definitely want to see a little bit more from. Now, that's the pessimistic side of it. The optimistic side of it is, well, what happens to this Bruins team if their goaltending stays pretty close to where they're at, right? Those numbers are obviously inflated right now because they're playing well, but let's say those numbers come down to even a .920 save percentage for the rest of this season. Jake DeBrusk pots in a couple goals here and there. John Beecher starts getting on the board. Trent Frederick. We see a little more from Poitras this season, and maybe he ends up being in the Calder Trophy race at the end of the year. Who knows? And the emergence of Pavel Zacha, who has looked horrible so far this season. If those guys play a little bit better and up to their standard, well, the Bruins' offense is going to pick up a little. Their defense is very solid. Even if it's not first in the league the whole year, it's going to probably be top 5 the whole year. It probably is, right? So this Bruins team, what's insane, and I've talked about this with Colorado and Vegas, is I don't even think we've seen the best version of the Boston Bruins yet. And I think that despite being 5-0, despite what they've done so far, I think there's still a lot left in the tank for the Bruins. And I think there's a lot more that this team could be doing that they aren't. And that's kind of the crazy thing when you think about it for this Bruins team, is there's so much that is still available in front of them. Now, what's also really nice here is for the rest of this month, their schedule is pretty good up until November. November's going to be a tough month. November's going to be a tough month for the Boston Bruins, but I think it's the best thing for them. And it's going to test them in ways that I think is best for a team like the Bruins right now. If you look at their schedule, they're finishing up a West Coast road trip, and they've played quite well on the road and at home, so that hasn't mattered. They play Chicago, and then they play a couple of games at home. Anaheim, Detroit, Florida, and Toronto. And the big theme for this month for Boston coming up is it's Atlantic Division Hate Month for the Boston Bruins. You look at the month of November, okay? They start off, they play Toronto and Detroit. Those are 2 teams that they're vying with right now in that division. You look at some of those road games. Pretty much all those road games to start November up until Thanksgiving. Back-to-back with Montreal and Buffalo. And then another back-to-back, not on consecutive nights, but consecutive road trip, right? Montreal-Buffalo road trip, and then Florida-Tampa road trip before Thanksgiving. Then they have to play the Rangers and Columbus and Toronto before they get in, well, once they get into December. So a lot of road games next month, a lot of road games that are going to involve teams in their division, a lot of 4-point games. And 4-point games mean just as much in November and October as they do in February and March. The points still count the same. This is going to be a big month for the Bruins. And they could really start to sink some teams in their division that are not already playing well, like Buffalo and Ottawa. They could really put those teams kind of out, kind of hang them out to dry. And they could maybe try to create a little separation between themselves and teams like Toronto and Detroit and Florida that are right there on their tail. I'm really excited to see what the Bruins do this year, because this was a team similar to Calgary on the Western Conference for totally different reasons, but there was a lot of uncertainty and a lot of change this offseason that made me wonder just how good are the Bruins going to be this year. And so far, they've lived up to expectations. And so far, like I said, they've lived up to expectations, not even playing their best hockey, I don't think. And that's what's interesting. Is this the ceiling for this Bruins team, or are we going to see more from those guys like DeBrusk and Zacha? Are they going to finally turn the corner, add some more scoring depth in that top six so Pastrnak doesn't have to score every game? That's going to be the difference for the Bruins. We know that this team's going to be led by Pastrnak, but they need a little bit of help if they want to get where they want to go. Shout out to Jim Montgomery. He's done a great job there as the coach of this team. There's a reason they're successful right now. It's not by accident. And I think the Bruins' success is sustainable. And I think as long as they stay healthy, there's not too many injuries to one of the older teams in the league, I think the Boston Bruins should be making the playoffs in 2024. But again, we're only 5 games into the season. But from what I've seen so far from this team, a lot of things to like up there in Beantown. Guys, if you want to support the channel, we have a 10% off discount code that will end on Halloween. 10% off. Use promo code PUCKISBACK for a 10% off discount code at the Goal Line Hockey Shop. The links to that are in the description down below. So if you're interested in picking up some Goal Line Hockey merch today, we just dropped the Yo collection to start this season. So if you're interested in that, we've got hats, crew necks, sweatshirts, regular t-shirts. We've got all that stuff in the shop. Also, if you would like to become a member today, another way to support the channel, we have a couple of different tiers, so make sure to check that out. Again, links to that are down below. Guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.